You think you already know. That is the problem. The buyers who get burned the hardest in the electric vehicle market are not the uninformed ones. They are the ones who did their homework, watched a dozen reviews, compared specs, and still walked into a dealership or clicked the order button convinced they were making the smartest financial move of the year. And statistically, a significant portion of them were wrong. Not because the vehicle was bad, not because the technology failed, but because nobody, not the influencers, not the brand, not even the well-meaning reviewer who gave it 9 out of 10, bothered to explain what the ownership experience actually looks like 12 months in, when the novelty wears off and the real cost structure reveals itself. There are 3 things happening in this market right now that most current owners will not say out loud. A depreciation pattern so aggressive it quietly erases years of fuel savings in a single quarter. A charging experience that looks effortless on a Tuesday morning and becomes a stress test on a holiday weekend. And a suite of features that feel premium on the surface, but start generating friction in daily use that no spec sheet warned you about. None of this is rumor. None of it is exaggeration. It is what happens when you take a vehicle that was genuinely revolutionary a few years ago and ask it to compete in 2026 against a market that has caught up fast. What you're about to hear is not what the brand wants trending, but it is exactly what you need to know before you spend $40,000, $50,000, or $60,000. Let's talk about the elephant in every EV conversation. There is one vehicle that became so dominant in the electric SUV space that it essentially defined the category in the minds of American buyers. It outsold its nearest electric competitor by a margin that is embarrassing to competitors. It became the default answer when anyone asked, "Which EV should I buy?" on every forum, subreddit, and comment section you can find. And the thing is, that popularity created a feedback loop. More owners meant more public data, which meant more positive visibility, which meant more buyers who assumed that popularity equals quality equals smart investment. That equation is not as clean as it looks. When you dig into J.D. Power's EV experience study, Consumer Reports reliability scores, and owner forums that stretch back years, a more complicated picture starts to emerge. Not a story of a bad product. This vehicle genuinely changed the industry, but a story of buyers who were sold a vision and received a reality that diverged from it in ways that cost them real money and real frustration. The online narrative about this vehicle is heavily skewed by early adopters who stake their identity on the brand, by content creators who get access and attention from being enthusiastic, and by the simple human psychology of justifying a major purchase. What gets buried in that noise is the stuff that matters most to someone making a financial decision. What happens to the value? What happens at the charger? What happens every day when the honeymoon is over? This is not a hate video. This is the thing nobody explains before you sign. The hidden depreciation curve. Imagine buying a vehicle and 6 months later, opening your browser to find that the manufacturer just dropped the starting price of the exact same model by $4,000. Not as a limited promotion, as a permanent price adjustment. Your asset, the one sitting in your driveway, just lost value by a decision made in a corporate boardroom that had nothing to do with the miles you drove or the care you gave it. That is not a hypothetical. That is the documented ownership reality of the most popular electric SUV in America right now. Between 2022 and 2024 alone, this brand executed a series of price cuts that would be considered aggressive even for a commodity appliance, let alone a vehicle that buyers had purchased as a long-term investment. We are talking about the Tesla Model Y, and the depreciation story around it is one of the least discussed and most financially consequential aspects of owning one in 2026. According to data tracked by IC Cars and Edmunds, the Model Y experienced some of the steepest depreciation curves of any electric vehicle in the US market over the past 2 years, at points losing more than 20% of its value in the first 12 months of ownership, a number that dwarfs the average for comparable gas-powered SUVs. And here's the mechanism that makes it worse. Tesla's ability to reprice vehicles unilaterally and repeatedly means that the used market adjusts almost in real time. The moment Tesla lowers the price of a new Model Y, every used Model Y on the market becomes worth proportionally less overnight. There is no buffer, no delay, no dealer network smoothing out the shock. It is a direct, immediate devaluation of your asset. For a buyer who financed at a higher price and is now looking at a vehicle worth less than their loan balance, a situation owners call being underwater, this is not an abstract financial concept. It is a monthly payment that no longer makes economic sense. The irony is brutal. The people who bought earlier, who were the loyal early adopters, got punished the most severely. They paid the premium, absorbed the price drops, and by the time the vehicle stabilized in value, they had already taken the full hit. Now compound that with the arrival of genuinely competitive alternatives in 2025 and 2026. The Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 9, the Kia EV9, the Rivian R1S. These vehicles have put real pressure on the used Tesla market because buyers now have credible options. When the competition gets better and your brand keeps cutting prices to maintain market share, the residual value of every used unit in the ecosystem suffers. This is not speculation. Used Model Y prices in Q1 2026 reflect a market that has repriced itself around a new competitive reality. If you are buying new today, you inherit that risk profile going forward. If you are buying used, you need to understand that the floor is not yet fully established. Real-world range versus promise. Picture this. It is January. You are in Chicago. The temperature dropped to 18 degrees overnight, and you walk to your garage this morning to find that your Model Y, which the EPA says should give you 330 miles on a full charge, is showing 240 miles on the dash. You did not forget to plug it in. The battery is at 100%. The cold weather simply consumed the energy buffer that the EPA number assumed did not exist. You have a meeting 90 minutes away, and a charging stop you did not plan for is now staring at you in the face. This is the range experience that the EPA rating absolutely does not prepare you for, and it is one of the most common complaints surfacing in Model Y owner forums heading into 2026. The EPA testing protocol uses a controlled environment, specific temperatures, specific speeds, specific load conditions that rarely reflect the way most Americans actually drive. According to testing by Edmunds and real-world data compiled by Recurrent Auto, the Model Y long-range AWD, rated at approximately 330 miles EPA, typically delivers somewhere between 240 and 280 miles in real-world mixed conditions. In winter temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, that number drops further, sometimes to 60 to 65% of the rated range, according to data from the Norwegian EV Association's cold weather testing, which is widely cited as one of the most rigorous range analysis methodologies available. Now, 240 miles is still a lot of range, but the psychological contract between buyer and vehicle was based on 330 miles, and when you consistently see 240 or 260, there is a slow-building frustration that starts to color the entire ownership experience. You begin to manage your battery differently. You stop trusting the estimate. You charge more conservatively, which means you're at chargers more often than you expected, which eats into the time savings you were promised. And here's where it gets nuanced. Tesla's navigation and energy management systems are genuinely intelligent. The car will route you through superchargers. It will tell you how much charge you will arrive with. And in most cases, it will be accurate within a reasonable margin. The problem is not the technology. The problem is the expectation that was set by a number that was never designed to reflect your actual commute, your actual climate, or the way you actually use a vehicle. High-speed highway driving, say 70 to 80 miles per hour, which is the actual speed of American interstates regardless of what the limit says, reduces range dramatically compared to EPA testing speeds. A Model Y running at 75 miles per hour in 30-degree weather, carrying 4 passengers and luggage, is not a 300-mile vehicle. It is closer to a 210-mile vehicle, and that changes your road trip calculus significantly. The frustration compounds because this information exists. It is buried in forums, in third-party testing reports, in Edmunds' real-world range database, but it is never the number in the commercial, never the number on the window sticker, and never the number the salesperson leads with. You get the 330, you live the 240, and that gap, modest as it sounds in isolation, starts to feel like a betrayal over the course of a year. Charging reality nobody mentions. Let's be honest about something first. Tesla built the best charging network in North America. Full stop. The supercharger network is more reliable, more widely distributed, and faster than most of the competition. When a system works the way it is designed to, plugging in a Model Y feels almost frictionless. You pull up, you plug in, you grab a coffee, you leave. That experience is real, and it is better than what most EV owners on other networks regularly deal with. So hold that truth. Now let's talk about what that experience looks like in 2026, after Tesla opened the supercharger network to other brands. After the network expanded rapidly to handle that new demand, and after the infrastructure reality of peak hours, high-traffic corridors, and urban congestion started to show its seams. By late 2025, Tesla had opened supercharger access to vehicles from Ford, GM, Rivian, and others through the NACS adapter standard. That was a win for the overall EV ecosystem. It was also a change that introduced queue dynamics at popular stations that Model Y owners never had to think about before. The 20-stall station outside the outlet mall in central New Jersey on a Saturday before Thanksgiving is no longer a Tesla-only resource. Owners report wait times of 15 to 30 minutes during peak travel periods at high-demand locations, according to anecdotal data from PlugShare check-ins and owner forum threads on Tesla Motors Club and Reddit. Now, 15 minutes is not the end of the world, but it is not the seamless experience that got you excited about switching from gas. The supercharger network also has a dirty secret that rarely makes it into reviews. Network reliability varies significantly by geography. In major metro areas and on major interstate corridors, you are well covered. In rural America, in secondary markets, in the Mountain West outside of ski-town corridors, the infrastructure gap is real. A road trip from Denver to Moab is manageable with planning. A spontaneous detour through eastern Oregon is not the same experience. And as the Model Y continues to sell in markets where charging infrastructure is still catching up to the vehicle's presence, a growing segment of owners is discovering that the "range anxiety is dead" headline was written for someone else's geography. There's also the home charging dimension that gets consistently undersold in the buying process. A Level 2 home charger installation, the 240-volt setup that gives you the overnight top-up experience that makes EV ownership genuinely convenient, costs between $800 and $2,000, depending on your panel capacity, your garage setup, and your local electrician's rates. That cost is real, it is upfront, and it is almost never factored into the comparison shoppers make between an EV and a gas vehicle. If you live in an apartment, a condo, or any housing situation without dedicated parking and a personal electrical panel, the home charging advantage essentially disappears. You become dependent on public charging, which reintroduces the time costs and the reliability variables that home charging was supposed to eliminate. The Tesla ecosystem is genuinely good, but it is not magic, and in 2026 it is not unchallenged in ways that matter to the everyday owner. Build quality and daily irritations. It starts with a sound. Not a crash, not a rattle, more of a creak, coming from somewhere around the A-pillar when the temperature drops. You turn the radio down. You try to find it. Some owners call it the cold creak, and there are entire forum threads, years long, dedicated to diagnosing and addressing it with adhesive foam and felt strips. Then there is the panel gap, the inconsistent spacing between body panels that became so notorious it spawned a dedicated inspection protocol that new buyers started performing in delivery lots before accepting their vehicles. Consumer Reports flagged build quality and fit and finish as consistent areas of owner concern across multiple model years of the Model Y. J.D. Power's initial quality study, from which Tesla has historically excluded itself by not allowing the surveys, began gathering third-party data through independent channels that told a consistent story. Owners who came from legacy German or Japanese brands frequently reported a quality perception gap, the sense that a $50,000 vehicle should not have uneven panel gaps, should not develop interior squeaks in the first year, should not have a trunk seal that emits wind noise at highway speeds. They are the accumulated small disappointments that define daily life with a vehicle, and they hit harder precisely because the Model Y is positioned and priced as a premium product. The minimalist interior that reads as sophisticated in a 30-second video starts to feel sparse when you spend an hour in stop-and-go traffic. The absence of a traditional instrument cluster, which Tesla eliminated entirely, polarizes long-term owners far more than it polarizes reviewers. Reading your speed from a center screen that also handles navigation, media, and climate requires a recalibration of your visual attention that some drivers adapt to quickly and others find persistently uncomfortable after years of use. The door handle design, which requires a press and pop mechanism rather than a traditional pull, confuses virtually every first-time passenger without exception. The auto-presenting door handles on the front, which extend when you approach with the key, occasionally fail in cold weather due to motor freezing, which is a known issue documented across multiple owner forums and addressed with varying success by service updates. None of this adds up to a crisis. Taken individually, each item is forgivable. Taken as a collection across years of ownership, at a price point that invites comparison to vehicles with genuinely premium interior quality, an Audi Q4 e-tron, a BMW iX3, even the Ioniq 5, which draws consistent praise for its interior execution. The cumulative picture is of a vehicle that prioritized technology and performance over tactile refinement, and priced itself as though it had delivered both software and over-reliance on tech. The pitch is elegant. One screen, clean interface, everything simplified. No buttons, no knobs, no visual clutter. When you first sit in a Model Y, the minimalism genuinely impresses. And then you try to adjust the technology. Specifically, you try to change the fan speed while merging onto the highway at 60 miles per hour, and you realize that doing so requires you to take your eyes off the road, navigate to the climate submenu on the touchscreen, and tap a slider. The physical knob that your muscle memory was trained to find in the dark is gone. There is no tactile reference point, no feedback without looking. This is not a niche complaint from technophobes. It is a usability issue that human factors researchers have documented as a genuine safety concern when complex vehicle controls are migrated entirely to touchscreens. The NHTSA has logged thousands of complaints related to driver distraction associated with touchscreen-only interfaces across multiple EV brands, and the Model Y's version of this problem is among the most discussed. The software itself, which Tesla updates over the air with genuine frequency, creates a different kind of friction, unpredictability. An update that arrives overnight can change the behavior of features you had learned to rely on. The regenerative braking feel, the autopilot engagement behavior, the voice command interface, all of these have been modified in ways that required owners to relearn interaction patterns they had already internalized. For most owners, the updates bring real improvements. But the cumulative experience of living with a vehicle whose behavior changes without your input is something that gas car owners simply never encounter, and it requires an adjustment in your mental model of what a vehicle is. Tesla's full self-driving system, now rebranded under the Cybercab and Autonomy umbrella, but still available as a subscription on the Model Y, has logged more miles and more regulatory scrutiny than any other advanced driver assistance system in the consumer market. The promise has consistently been fully autonomous driving is coming soon, since 2016. In 2026, FSD on the Model Y is genuinely impressive in controlled conditions and genuinely unpredictable in edge cases. NHTSA investigations into autopilot-related incidents, including a widely publicized consent order and recall process involving the auto steer feature in 2023 and 2024, introduced a layer of regulatory shadow over the technology that buyers in 2026 cannot ignore. The dependency on software also creates a warranty and support dynamic that is unlike anything in traditional automotive. When something feels wrong in a Model Y and it turns out to be a software issue, the resolution is an update, which may come in days or in months, with no guaranteed timeline and no loaner vehicle in the interim. Owners on the Tesla Motors Club forum describe service experiences that range from genuinely excellent to frustratingly opaque, with visibility into repair status and parts availability that varies dramatically by market and service center capacity. The ownership cost illusion. Here's the version of the story everyone knows. You switch to electric, you stop buying gas, your fuel costs drop dramatically, you barely need to touch a mechanic, and over 5 years you save enough money to justify the higher sticker price. That story is true in outline and misleading in detail, and the Model Y is the vehicle where the gap between the outline and the detail matters most, because it sits at a price point where buyers expect the math to be clean. Let's run through the actual cost structure. The Model Y, partly due to its repair cost profile, aluminum-intensive construction, proprietary battery pack integration, limited independent repair network, consistently generates higher insurance premiums than comparable gas SUVs. According to data from Bankrate and Insurify's 2025 EV insurance analysis, Model Y owners pay on average 15 to 25% more in annual premiums than owners of a comparable Toyota RAV4 or Honda CR-V. On a $50,000 vehicle, that difference can represent $500 to $800 additional dollars per year that disappears from your savings calculation without ever appearing in a YouTube comparison video. Charging costs are variable in ways that gas costs are not, and that variability works against you in specific situations. Home charging on a standard utility rate is genuinely cheap, often the equivalent of $1 or $2 per 100 miles depending on your state and time of use rate. Public supercharging, which becomes necessary when you lack home charging or go on road trips, runs significantly higher. Tesla's per kWh rates at superchargers averaged between 30 and 45 cents in 2025, depending on location and time of day. At those rates, a full charge from near empty on a long-range Model Y costs between $22 and $32, not dramatically less than filling a fuel-efficient gas vehicle once you account for real-world efficiency. For buyers without home charging access, the economics of EV ownership lose a significant portion of their advantage. Tire wear is another cost that catches owners off guard. The Model Y's weight, around 4,500 pounds for the AWD variant, combined with its instant torque delivery, creates accelerated tire wear patterns that multiple owners have flagged. The aggressive wear rate on entry-level OEM tires leads to replacement cycles that come earlier than expected, with premium all-season EV-rated tires running $300 to $400 per corner. Over a 5-year ownership period, tire costs on a Model Y can run significantly higher than on a comparably sized gas SUV. The federal tax credit situation adds another layer of complexity. The Model Y qualifies for the $7,500 federal EV tax credit under the Inflation Reduction Act provisions, but with income caps, MSRP limits, and assembly requirements that shift regularly, buyers need to verify their specific eligibility rather than assuming the headline credit applies to their situation. For some buyers at higher income levels, the credit is fully phased out. For others, the MSRP of the specific trim they want exceeds the qualifying threshold. The credit is real and significant when it applies, but it is not a guarantee, and planning your purchase economics around an incentive you may not qualify for is a mistake that costs real money. Who this car is actually for? Here's where the conversation needs to shift, because nothing in this script should be read as a verdict against the Model Y as a vehicle. That would be intellectually dishonest, and it would insult the genuine intelligence of the people for whom this vehicle is actually a near perfect choice. The person who gets maximum value out of a Model Y in 2026 looks like this. You own your home, you have a garage, and you have already installed or can easily install a level 2 charger. Your daily commute is under 60 miles round trip, which means you are drawing almost entirely on cheap home electricity, and the supercharger network is a convenience for road trips rather than a daily dependency. You are comfortable with technology that changes, updates, and occasionally requires you to relearn something. You are not attached to the tactile experience of a traditional car interior, dials, buttons, the physical and sensory language of German or Japanese automotive engineering. You do most of your driving in a major metro area or along well-developed interstate corridors where supercharger density is high. You plan to keep the vehicle for 7+ years, which allows the depreciation curve to flatten and the total cost of ownership advantages to compound over time. You are buying an estate with generous EV incentives that stack on top of the federal credit, and your income level makes you eligible for those credits. If that profile describes you, the Model Y remains a genuinely excellent choice in 2026. The supercharger network is still the best in the country. The over-the-air update system, frustrating as it can be, also means your vehicle legitimately improves over time in ways no gas car can match. The performance-to-price ratio, especially at the base and long-range trim levels, is competitive with anything in the class. The cargo space and practicality of the crossover form factor make it a legitimately useful family vehicle. And for the right buyer, the ecosystem integration, the app, the energy management, the navigation, genuinely reduces friction in daily life in ways that competing EVs have not yet fully replicated. The problem is not the vehicle. The problem is the mismatch between the vehicle's actual optimal owner profile and the vastly wider audience the marketing reaches. The person who lives in an apartment in Phoenix and needs a vehicle for occasional long-distance runs to Los Angeles, who cares deeply about interior quality and hates software updates, who is financing at a high rate and needs strong residual value to make the math work. That person is being sold a Model Y as though it were the obvious answer. And for that person, the alternatives deserve far more consideration than they are getting. So, here's the question nobody in the EV community wants sitting in their feed. If you knew in month 1 what you know now about the real range, the real depreciation curve, the real charging experience on a holiday weekend, the insurance premium nobody warned you about, and the software update that quietly changed the way your car behaves while you are asleep, would you have made the same decision? Most owners who respond honestly to that question do not say they regret the Model Y entirely. What they say is more unsettling. They say they wish someone had shown them the full picture before they committed. Because a full picture might have led them to wait 6 months, or to look at vehicles that handle specific pieces of this equation better than the one they bought. Vehicles that trade some of the Tesla ecosystem lock-in for stronger residual value protection, or a more tactile interior, or a charging architecture that performed more consistently in cold weather, or an ownership cost structure that actually delivered on the savings narrative. Those vehicles exist. Some of them cost less, some of them cost more and justify it. Some of them are from brands you might not have seriously considered because the Model Y was so loud in the room. The Model Y is not the end of the conversation. In a market moving as fast as this one, it might not even be the beginning of the right one for you. So tell me, if you own a Model Y right now, how close to the EPA estimate are you actually hitting in daily use? Drop your real number in the comments, because that number tells a story that no window sticker ever will.